Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Matching Mole by the band Matching Mole.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
So originally when I made this list, this album was not on the list, and for the simple reason that no one really actually recommended it to me. But as the year went on, I started realizing that there were certain albums on the list that were basically not supposed to be there because they were not prog, or because I didn't really think that I was gonna like them at all. So I took out 10 albums from the list and I gave you regular viewers a chance to vote on which album you want me to add to the series, and well, you voted on 10 albums and one of them happened to be Matching Mole's debut, which we are reviewing today. So to get this video started, here's some of my favorite bits from this album. So a lot of you might not remember, but as Matching Mole is a band with only 2 studio albums, we've actually already reviewed half of their discography. Back all the way in episode 63, we've taken a look at 1972's Little Red Record, which was a definitive treat, and now we're taking a look at this one. And while I am well prepared to start reviewing this album, and because I've already made a video about Matching Mole in the past, while I mostly wouldn't need to actually say a lot of information about them, I just kind of looked at that other review and realized that I've neglected a lot of interesting details about this band. So here's a bit of backstory and then we'll get to my personal opinion of this album. So you already might know that the founder member of Matching Mole is no other than Robert Wyatt, the well-known drummer from the Soft Machine. He was with them since they begun and he played with them on some of their pivotal albums like their debut and one that is considered to be their best one to date, being Third. And after recording and releasing Third, Robert Wyatt would go on to release a solo album, his first of its kind, and then he would come back to the Soft Machine, but this time the band members really didn't look positively towards his ideas of experimentation and especially vocal experimentation, so being very frustrated he decided to leave the band. Now rightfully agitated, Wyatt now wanted to do something of his own, so he wanted to yet again create another solo album, but the CBS record label under which he was signed actually opted for him to form a new band and release his music under that name, so he took a group of very talented musicians and formed a band of their own. Now the name that would be given to this band is actually taken from the French translation of the name Soft Machine, which turns out to be in English Machine Mole, and if you just alter some things here and there, you get of course the name Matching Mole. And this newly formed group would only rehearse together for 3 months before going in studio and recording their debut album, and in 1972 they released now what is known to be yet another Canterbury classic. Now seeing as this one was initially supposed to be a solo album of Robert Wyatt, it's not surprising to see that a lot of the compositions on here are very much influenced by his own writing, but there are a few exceptions to that, with part of the dance being a fill Phil Miller composition, and the instrumental section for Oh Caroline being composed by David Sinclair. But one cannot minimize the effect of the autocratic nature of Wyatt as a band leader, and him being so dominant with his own ideas and his own composition and writing credits is what eventually made keyboardist David Sinclair to depart the band. But yeah, from this point onwards we of course move on to their second album released in the same year, and I don't think that I have to say a lot about it because, as I said, there is a video about it on the channel already. So with that being said, let's start talking about this album. So this album opens up with a beautiful track, which is easily my favorite track from this entire album, called Oh Caroline. Now in the credits for this album it is claimed that David Sinclair is playing the Hammond organ and a regular piano, while Robert Wyatt also adds his own mellotron into the mix. Now, while only these three keyboards sound like a limited array of keyboards, they managed to create such an overarching and comprehensive sound on here that it's honestly mind-boggling to listen to, and it's most well presented on this first track called Oh Caroline. Now, just as I said, the composition, the instrumental for this one was composed of course by David Sinclair, and the lyrics were written by Robert Wyatt, inspired basically by him missing his ex-girlfriend called Caroline Coon. And this one, with its lovely beginning that opens up this album, which in my personal opinion features a better flute mellotron section than even Strawberry Fields Forever, is just hauntingly hypnotized. And the thing about this song is that it never really picks up the pace, it always stays very subdued, very calm, and it's all explained in the lovely lyrics stating how literally there is David playing the piano and Robert might play the drums, and he doesn't know if he can get the excitement to do so because Caroline of course isn't there. And these sort of self-reflective lyrics are just what I love about a lot of the Canterbury scene bands and songs. It's so good. I love it when lyrics do that. Even if they're not the most beautifully written lyrics in the world, their vividness and their self-reflectiveness, it makes them so freaking magical. Now the next two tracks to follow this one are also really good, and they flow seamlessly from one another, and they're also very much heartfelt like the first track on the album, although admittedly not as good. But then we reach the point where this album finally sheds its skin and shows us its true form, and that's of course the form of improvisation. Of course, the track I am referring to with this one is part of the dance, the one that is composed by Phil Miller, although saying composed probably isn't the right term on here, because besides a few footnotes that the band reaches in certain points in this long composition, it feels like everything that comes in between those sections is mostly improvised. And while I'm not a huge advocate of improvisation, as I feel it becomes quite monotonous and tedious at times, I do find that the collection of great minds, probably some of England's greatest prog minds ever, all put together in an improvisation session creates a hell of a lot of fun in the form of course music. And honestly, if Oh Caroline wasn't such a definitive favorite from this album, this would be a very strong second place contender. Now yes, I will address the fact that my two favorite tracks from this album happen to be the ones that weren't entirely or even completely not composed by Robert Wyatt, despite this album clearly being a very Wyatt-y album. I don't know how to explain this. I don't think that Wyatt is neglectable on here. Everything from his vocals to the way that he plays to the way that he composes everything else on this album is so pivotal, yet I just find myself being attracted to these two tracks in particular. Anyway, I love the rest of this entire album, and as I said, improvisation is really the name of the game here. As the music goes along, it does sound cohesive, although it does also lack some frame, which is something that I found to be a bit less flavorful, but again, we do get some of the best minds on here playing together, semi-improvising themselves, and it sounds really good. And one other thing which I really liked about the entirety of this album, of course, has to be the song titles and their wittiness. We have two matching title combos on this album, those of course being Signed Curtains and Immediate Curtains, and of course Instant Pussy, and then you later on realize that the band were just saying it in order for it to just be a synonym for another track called Instant Kitten. And the last song title that really got to me had to be Beer as in Brain Deer. I don't know what about it, it's so freaking hilarious. Beer as in reindeer, what's a reindeer? It sounds so funny, and while that one cracked me up, it was soon that I also realized that this one harkens at yet another title from the second album by Matching Mole, and that is of course my favorite song from the Little Red Record, being Brandy as in Benj. So you see, when I think of the Canterbury scene, honestly a lot of this album is what I think of, because it does have the English folk influences in it, it does have the sense of psychedelia, it has those lovely keyboard works, and especially of course delivered here by David Sinclair, and all in all it does have the wittiness and whimsicalness that you can only find in this certain region of music. So yeah, if you ask me, I think that this is one of those Canterbury classics, and while many probably would disagree with me and thinking that this one is neglectable to some extent, I personally found it really enjoyable, and when comparing it to their other album again from the same year, I think that this one is overall slightly better, and I do find some more personal connection to this one. So if I had to make a top 10 list of top 10 prog album covers that literally don't look anything like you'd expect a prog album cover to look like, that's not a good title, I would put this one definitively at the number 1 spot. Yeah, this is a fine cover, it's actually beautiful and it's beautifully drawn, and it's also kinda cute. But cute isn't really the thing I associate with prog that often, and that's why I do feel like there is a certain dissonance on here. You just have these really two cute moles, and they're coming out of the ground and they're meeting each other, and they have their cute coats on, and they're in this sort of scarcely flowered ground bed, and it's just all so cute, and it has a very nostalgic feeling to it as well in the way that it's drawn and the logo and everything, and I don't know what it is about this one, but it doesn't feel like a prog cover, yet it is also such a lovely cover. This album probably most likely calls for a rating of 8 out of 10. It's really good, and especially its beginning, which is almost seemingly perfect. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow because we're going to be listening to Fear of a Blank Planet by Porcupine Tree. Yes, I know, I've taken that video from the end of the series and put it here because honestly I couldn't be bothered, and also because there is a very interesting surprise in tomorrow's episode, so stay tuned for it. Anyway, I'd like to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Wanham, Ristav Kings, and Lindsay Haycox. You guys are just the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my about page. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.